Flink's had a lot of interest from the major studios, both in Hollywood and in Asia. And you know, I've met with the heads of certain studios. I can't give their names, but they took me to dinner. It was very good. I think all of the studios had a tough time deciding, you know, how many Bigfoot stories can their studio tell. And so sometimes it'll be a great story, it'll be the right story, but they'll be like, well, we just picked up a Bigfoot story, and we really don't want to make a second one because we've got the Bigfoot section of our agenda covered. Thank you. But there's interest in it, you know, and Hollywood interest. You can't second guess it, or you can't try to, you know, get ahead of it and say, oh, you know, Bigfoot's going to be hot next year. You know, there was just a Loch Ness monster movie, the Water Horse, came out. There's no way you could guess that. I mean, that sort of came out. There's no way you could guess that. I mean, that sort of the children's book story that it was written, you know, that was based on, was written a long time ago. So, you know, these books have a long shelf life, and it may be someone next year wants to do Flink, and maybe 20 years from now, or maybe never. So it takes a while. Well, the reason why I do black and white is there's a number of reasons. First of all, I'm not that great with color. In all my art training and all of my art focus of my whole life, I've always loved just my pencil and my paper. So I'll draw little creatures on it. I'll tell the little story about where they come from and what their name is. And it just never occurred to me to put color on them. Like in my mind, I just never wonder, gee, I wonder what color he is. It doesn't tell the story to me. So that's one reason, is color, I don't care. Number two is the medium of comics is so frugal that, you know, our profit margin is very narrow. It's very hard for the book to break even or make a lot of money. And suddenly, you know, adding color is another step, both in me or hiring a colorist to color the book is going to cost more money, and plus the printing is it takes one pass for the black and white and other passes for the color, and so suddenly you're upping the cost on that end. And again, for me, the reason why the graphic novel exists is because of the story. And the story, I just haven't seen many stories that really need color. I'd rather tell another story than color my last one. You know what I mean? If that's kind of the choice, that's kind of the workload is, okay, now you're done with the black and white on this book. Now you can color it, or you can get started on your next story. I will take the next story every time. And finally, the third reason why I do black and white is because if you do black and white right, you don't need color. And to me, it's better to focus on the black and white artwork and really pushing it to the very best it can be. And then if I do my job right on that, I don't need the color. And if I knew I was going to rely on color to fix all my problems, I'd go, I can do a crummy job on the black and white, and we'll fix it when we add color. It'll make it special. Even if someday my books are all colored, I like to think that I'm going to do the very best job I can on them in black and white. And who needs color? Well, I've gotten, my biggest, you know, response to Flink has been with a father-son story. I had a father emailed me and saying how the book meant something so deep to him when he read it with his 12-year-old son, who's similar to the age of Conrad, the boy in the story of Flink. Stepdads and stepsons, where they are put together in a family through marriage, can kind of relate to the non-traditional bond of these two characters who actually, they're close and they're not blood relatives. And in a way, it's how you really do you really can pick your family. It really isn't, you know, we all have a blood contract with our relatives. But there's people who can become brothers. There's people who can become father figures. There are people whom we can take care of like their sons or daughters and look out for them, you know. There's all different kinds of relationships out there. You know, my wife isn't a blood relative. Maybe yours is. But, you know, she's my closest relationship. You know, the word relate or relative. She's my closest relationship there is. And there's no reason why my audience can't relate to that, because we all create bonds with people who, you know, who we choose to make closer than a brother. That's what Flink is about, is fate has separated these two by making one a Bigfoot and one a boy, but fate is going to use these two to help each other out with a personal crisis they're having. Well, for starters, I would never illustrate another creator's story. I am in this to tell the story. And so it would completely, you know, defeat the purpose if I just illustrated someone else's work. It would be tempting to do it on certain works, but I don't see myself as an illustrator first. I see myself as a storyteller first. And for that, I would consider having another artist illustrate my story. You know, it's not my favorite thing to do. I love drawing too much, and it's too easy for me, frankly, just to draw it myself. You know, if I did have another artist draw it, I would probably just say, I don't even want to see it, and I don't want to give you any notes, just do your thing. Because if I did have to illustrate someone else's story, the first requirement would be, I don't want to hear from you at all. Give me your story and I get to edit it and do whatever I want with it, and I don't want notes, and goodbye. I primarily ink with a Winsor Newton Series 7 brush, size 3. And that's I learned, you know, about that brush primarily through Bill Watterson. That's what he uses. I don't know about that size. I use a 0 size also on some books, but lately I've been really sticking to the 3. The 3 is a slightly bigger brush head, and so if it's in good shape, it can go tight and draw a very tight line that's the same as the size 0. But when I want to lay it down and really put a line down, it'll go pretty fat, and it'll give me a good line too. So, and then I use pens for tech stuff, you know, for borders and panels. I'll use a pen. For cross hatching, I'll use a pen. To get me out of trouble, I try not to use hatching and pens too much, but there's times when just the art, I just look at the page and it's not clear enough, and I'll have to go back in with I use microns, with a micron pen, and hatch in some stuff to create some separation and clarity.